The IDF continues to attack Hezbollah targets in Lebanon as the Iranian-backed terrorist group fired hundreds of rockets and UAVs into Israel on Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. 35 of those weapons targeted Haifa Bay, including a UAV that hit an elderly care facility in Herzliya, which thankfully had already been evacuated. Meanwhile, the IDF revealed some more of Hezbollah's plans for carrying out October 7th-style attacks against Israeli communities in the Galilee. On the southern front, fighting continues at high intensity in the northern Gaza Strip, while plans have been captured that reveal the true scope of what Hamas planned for October 7th, including attacks on Tel Aviv with help from Iran. The threats from Iranian-backed Shiite militias in Syria and Iraq are also increasing, while everyone, both Israel's friends and its enemies, are wondering what response it will make to the ballistic missile attack 2 weeks ago. Iran says it will respond with even greater force if Israel retaliates, but talk is cheap, and many in Israel doubt that they even have the capacity to follow through on these threats. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on this 374th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and all the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, all of whom are under the auspices of Iran, the head of the axis of evil. Before we start, please take a minute to click the subscribe button so that you can subscribe to this YouTube channel and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. During Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, which fell on Saturday this year, battles continued to rage in southern Lebanon, and the IDF was able to eliminate 50 Hezbollah terrorists in fierce battles, often face-to-face with the enemy. In addition, the IDF reported that more than 200 Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon were destroyed by air and artillery strikes, including underground tunnel shafts, dozens of infrastructure where weapons were stored, rockets and launchers, mortars, bombs, and anti-tank missiles aimed at northern communities and the forces operating in that area. As usual, large stocks of weapons, ammunition, and military equipment of all kinds was also captured and will no longer be available for Hezbollah to use against Israel. Shortly after Yom Kippur began on Friday evening, the IDF announced that jets had struck the launch sites that Hezbollah was using to fire into northern Israel. But more rockets kept coming, and soon alarms were heard again in Shlomi and Rosh Hanikra, Israeli communities in the northern part of Israel, and later also in Kiryat Shmona, Margaliot, Misgav-Am, Menara, and Kfar Giladi. The IDF spokesman in Arabic, Lieutenant Colonel Avichai Aderi, called on the residents of 23 additional villages in southern Lebanon to evacuate their homes immediately, adding, anyone who is near Hezbollah's people, their facilities, or their weapons is putting their lives in danger. You must pass immediately north of the El Awali River. Any movements towards the south is a danger to your life. Tonight and this morning, the IDF attacked many Hezbollah positions inside these villages in southern Lebanon, using air and artillery strikes as well as ground maneuvers. There were also reports of attacks on Hezbollah positions further north, in areas where they haven't been hit before. From the information gathered by the IDF since the ground maneuver began in southern Lebanon, a shocking picture of Hezbollah's preparations for a major attack have been revealed. To start with, the Redouan Forces commandos were in position just 500 meters from the border fence. They were equipped with sophisticated weapons and equipment and large quantities of ammunition, including short-range rockets and mortars, all designed to allow these commandos to penetrate Israel's border defenses and take control of civilian communities. The obvious intent of all these preparations was to carry out attacks on Israeli civilian communities, just like what Hamas did on October 7, 2023. But it would have been much worse in these northern communities because there are so many more civilians there, and Hezbollah had much larger forces that were prepared to attack them. In any case, Hezbollah began firing rockets, UAVs, and anti-tank missiles into northern Israel on October 8th, and the IDF began a counterattack which included targeted strikes on key Hezbollah infrastructure and personnel. In early September, that counterattack was kicked into a higher gear, and since the senior and even mid-level leadership of this organization has been annihilated, leading to paralysis in the lower ranks. These lower ranks are broken, confused, and increasingly desperate as they face the full might of the IDF ground forces who are coming to put an end to the threat on Israel's northern border. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on what is happening in Israel. But to stay tuned in true real time, go to our website at tbnisrael.com/news. You can also follow us on all your favorite social media platforms to stay up to date. Shifting our focus to the intelligence campaign, Shin Bet Chief Ronen Bar said during his visit to southern Lebanon over the weekend that the security forces must demonstrate a physical presence on both sides of the border with countries with which there is no peace agreement. I mean Lebanon and the Gaza Strip. By this he meant that the IDF ground forces would need to hold a security zone inside southern Lebanon for a certain period of time until a political settlement could be reached that would put an end to the threat that Hezbollah poses. He added that it is not enough to have guards at the entrance of the Israeli malls and air defense systems shooting down incoming rockets and missiles. The security forces must be present on the terrorists' home turf, and that means a strong presence on the borders of countries with which Israel has peace, and a strong presence on both sides of the border with countries we do not have peace yet, with full freedom of action. Saying all of that, we can see that Hezbollah's ability to operate against Israel has been greatly diminished following a series of heavy blows it has suffered. The fears that it could launch thousands of rockets every day into Israel, causing massive destruction and large numbers of casualties, have not come to pass. But this organization is very dangerous, and Israel cannot afford to become complacent. Hezbollah still enjoys wide support amongst Lebanese Shiite communities and the backing of the Islamic Republic of Iran. It also has strategic depth inside Lebanon, which Hamas does not have in the Gaza Strip. The Bekaa Valley in central Lebanon is a Shiite stronghold that Hezbollah can continue to draw from and fall back into if necessary, and the IDF might have to follow them there to continue the battle. This is not to even mention Syria, which is much larger than Lebanon. Iran controls vast areas of Syria near the Lebanese border, and it sends weapons to Hezbollah through this border. It also makes its territory available to Hezbollah for training, regrouping, and even firing weapons into Israel. Speaking of which, Hezbollah made sure to launch dozens of rockets into the Galilee communities throughout Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. This included the region of Haifa Bay, with more than 35 weapons fired into this area, doing some damage to buildings and wounding 3 people. Amongst the weapons that were fired into Israel over the holiday was a UAV that, according to the IDF, crossed into Israel from Syria, exploding in an open area in the northern Golan Heights. In addition, the IDF said last night that 2 UAVs crossed into Israel from the territory of Lebanon and reached the center of the country. One of them was intercepted while the other hit an elderly care facility in Herzliya. The wounded from all of these attacks, as well as those that were injured from when they fell as they ran to a protected space, and hundreds of other people who were injured in the usual accidents and injuries that accompany Yom Kippur every year, were treated by our friends at Magen David Adom. Magen David Adom is Israel's emergency medical response team. They have 35,000 employees and volunteers, and hundreds of vehicles, including ambulances, medical scooters, helicopters, and even boats to reach and treat people who are hurt, wounded, injured, sick, or having a baby. On Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement this year, Magen David Adom treated dozens of people who had been hurt in accidents while taking part in the tradition of riding bicycles through the empty streets and they also helped deliver over 100 babies, including one who was born in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The work they do is miraculous, but it's also just another routine day at the office for these amazing people. Magen David Adom relies entirely on donations, so if you want to support them, you can visit the website at www.savelifeisrael.com. Now back to the news, and switching our focus to the Gaza Strip, where IDF soldiers continue the hard work of eliminating the threat from Hamas, which doesn't seem to realize that it has been defeated and needs to quit fighting. Over the weekend, dozens of terrorists were eliminated in battles with the 162nd Division in Jabalia. This operation has resulted in the elimination of over 200 terrorists since it began a few weeks ago, and this has included those who fell in exchanges of fire with IDF ground troops, as well as airstrikes and artillery fire. This is in addition to the tunnels that have been found and demolished, and the stocks of weapons and ammunition that have been captured. Intelligence materials have also been captured, including documents which give chilling details of the large strategic plan that Hamas had on October 7th. According to the report in the Washington Post newspaper, the plan was for Hezbollah and Iran to be part of the assault on Israel from the beginning, and for Hamas and Hezbollah to penetrate deep into Israeli territory, possibly even linking up in Tel Aviv. For more than 2 years, Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar convened senior members of the terrorist organization in a special forum called the Limited Military Council and planned the attack in detail. Hamas summaries of these secret meetings, the only forum in which the top officials spoke freely without fear of Israeli intelligence, were found on a computer that was seized by the IDF in January in a tunnel that had recently been occupied by Sinwar himself. The documents on that computer include illustrated presentations and charts detailing potential attack points, as well as ways to integrate other terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah and other elements from Iran and Syria into coordinated attacks against Israel. In the documents, it is described that Hamas planned to carry out daring operations that include the use of trains, boats, and even horse-drawn carriages, alongside sophisticated attacks aimed at sensitive facilities in the city centers of Israel. This presentation features ambitious plans such as the demolition of skyscrapers in central Tel Aviv, including the Moshe Aviv Tower and the Azrieli Towers. In addition, the documents describe strategies for hitting the main train stations with loads that will be placed on transport wagons. The idea behind the plan was to cause the collapse of buildings adjacent to important security facilities in order to disrupt the activities of the IDF during the attacks. There are also letters which are written in Arabic and addressed to Iran's leaders, emphasizing Hamas's willingness to act with full commitment in order to achieve their goals, including requests for broad financial assistance of approximately $500 million and the training of approximately 12,000 additional fighters. These documents are only part of the findings found since the beginning of the IDF's ground maneuver to Gaza. According to experts, they can be seen as evidence that Hamas desired to lead a large-scale attack that would trigger a combined response from other hostile elements. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on these developments going forward. Before we move on to the report on what is happening with Iran by our senior analyst Mati Shoshani, I would like to ask you to take a second and find the subscribe button, press on it, subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you will never miss another update about boots on the ground. And now, an overview of the war with Hezbollah and the Israeli response to Iran from TBN Israel senior analyst Mati Shoshani.
Thank you, Yair. I want to start by saying all the best to the IDF. Since the beginning of the attack in Lebanon, Israel is no longer awaiting for approval from anyone to decide how to handle an attack, where to attack, or who to attack. The results speak for themselves, as there is a highly effective awareness campaign, and we're witnessing a significant change in global perceptions of this war. For example, this is just one of many, the elimination of Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah, was authorized without prior cooperation with the Americans or any of our other allies, and sent a clear message: Israel does not wait for international approval. It acts according to its own interest and under its own conditions. The continuation of this successful policy must include moves that continue to strengthen Israel's deterrence and the fear and confusion among the enemy ranks. Israel must continue to control the narrative and convey the message that the use of force is unpredictable and uncompromising. There are no more sacred cows, and we are no longer constrained. This is the way to do things here in the Middle East, and we can see how well it's working. A successful awareness campaigns are done from the end to the beginning. We start by defining the type of psychological influence on the leaders and on the public opinion, and from there, we sow the desired influence strategy. What we have not done well enough is to manage the narrative that emphasizes that Israel is acting in the interest of self-defense and not as an aggressive force. Doing a better job at that would help maintain international support. The power of consciousness is not only in the military operations, but also in shaping the perception of the public, which strengthens the legitimacy, and there truly is one, of the steps that Israel takes. After the outbreak of the Iron Swords War, Israel is not limited by the old ways of doing things, but operates according to a completely new set of rules. The enemies can no longer anticipate Israel's moves, and they are in a constant state of uncertainty. It is true that the physical deterrence is significant, but the real war is fought in the arena of consciousness. As a result, Israel's enemies, but also our friends, are uncertain about the most likely targets of the anticipated Israeli attack on Iran. And that's a good thing. There are fears it could lead to a wide global impact. Senior American officials have been quoted by CNN as saying that in Israel, they have not yet made a final decision about how and when to act. The Iranian government feels very anxious and is engaged in diplomatic efforts with countries around the world, and specifically the Middle East, to examine whether they can reduce the scope of the Israeli response to the Iranian missile attack earlier this month. And if that fails, to help defend Tehran. Iran's anxiety stems from the uncertainty regarding the U.S.'s ability to convince Israel not to attack Iranian nuclear sites and oil facilities, and from the fact that its most important militia in the region, Hezbollah, has been significantly weakened following Israeli military operations in recent weeks. The Biden administration is deeply concerned that the ongoing mutual attacks between Iran and Israel, which began earlier this year after Israel attacked what Iran claimed was its consulate building in Damascus, could degenerate or devolve into a major regional war involving the U.S. as well. A large part of the concerns stem from the fact that from the beginning of this war, from its earliest moments, and similar to the IDF's activity in Gaza, Israel more or less ignored the U.S. calls for restraint in Lebanon. According to the reports, Israel also did not consult with the U.S. before attacking the pagers and walkie-talkies, or before assassinating Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut, or that strike violated a delicate ceasefire proposal proposed by the U.S. and France only 48 hours earlier, leading to irritation in Washington and Paris. Israel's war cabinet reportedly met on Thursday evening to discuss the next moves against Iran, but according to media reports, no final decision was made. Here at TBN Israel, we'll continue to update our viewers on developments going forward. I'm reporting today right from the Madaz headquarters, today's show's sponsor. And now, back to Yair Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mati. Before I continue, I want to ask you to support us so that we can create more videos like this one. You can do so by clicking the donate button on YouTube or by going to our website at www.tbnisrael.com/give. Last week's drone attack on the Golan Heights, which killed 2 IDF soldiers, reminded us once again of the threat of the Shiite militias in Iraq. Since the war in the north escalated, the militias have increased the launching of UAVs towards Israel as part of their loyalty to Iran and its so-called axis of resistance. This alliance also includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in Gaza and the Houthis in Yemen. According to Arab media, the Shiite militias in Iraq have pledged to help Hezbollah in Lebanon. It is not just about the UAV launches that have been increased, but also about the fighters that the militias intend to send into Lebanon to try and reinforce Hezbollah on the ground. In addition, there have been reports of cooperation between the militias and Houthi elements from Yemen who have come to Iraq for military advice since the beginning of this war. The Shiite militias are launching weapons against American bases in Iraq and Syria. This is being done to pressure the Biden administration to push Israel for a ceasefire. Another goal of the organization is to speed up the complete withdrawal of the remaining American forces in that region. This has been a goal of Iran for decades, and it is a big part of what motivated them to build up these militias in the first place. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on everything that is happening in Israel and in this war in this region. If you want to support us, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. We want to reach 1 million subscribers before the end of this year. We're very close, but we need your help. If you want to pray for the situation, I will ask you to make it personal. Pray for an IDF soldier, for a unit, for a hostage that is held in the Gaza Strip. Pray for his family. The most important thing that you can do in this war is pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Let me remind you that this is a spiritual war that involves all of us. The enemy wants to destroy Israel, to separate all of you, all of us, from the God of Israel and his promises to the people of Israel. So keep praying and thank you, and we will win this war together.